Following the release of Spider-Man 3 in April 2007 and its global box office earnings of $895 million, Sony Pictures would immediately secure star Tobey Maguire to reprise the role of Peter Parker and Sam Raimi, director of the trilogy, in a deal that would aim to shoot Part 4 and Part 5 back-to-back, in a move that looked to be cost-effective and because it isn't always easy to get everybody back together. As 2009 ended and 2010 began, fans of Raimi's trilogy were eagerly awaiting Spider-Man 4. A release date of May 2011 had been slated, even before casting decisions had been made and a final screenplay had been written to the satisfaction of the principal players. Raimi was said to be insisting that John Malkovich play the villainous Vulture, and Sony was looking to cast Anne Hathaway dependent upon the star's fee. In mid-December 2009, the project's special effects team received emails notifying them that there could be delays and that the start date would be pushed back, as Raimi was hesitant to approve the latest draft of the screenplay, and according to sources, he was vocal in letting Sony know that he hated it. By January, the rush was on to complete the screenplay with a view to start principal photography that February. Raimi finally threw up his hands and withdrew from Spider-Man 4 altogether. Deadline broke the news that Raimi had told Sony Pictures, "I can't make your date. I can't go forward creatively." And so, once he said that's it, Sony Pictures co-chairman Amy Pascal and Columbia Pictures' Matt Tolmach decided they didn't want to replace him and instead would choose to reboot the franchise. Tobey Maguire was informed of the decision in a phone call from Pascal and wasn't said to be upset. The studio said, "He's made 3 great Spider-Man movies. He's done really well. But he's the kind of guy who, if Sam wanted to go forward, would have been there for Sam in the studio, absolutely." So now, Tobey Maguire's take on the web-slinger had officially bid farewell, and it was time to begin the search for a new actor to do whatever a spider can. In regards to the Raimi films, Pascal issued a press release stating, "A decade ago, we set out on this journey with Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire, and together we made 3 Spider-Man films that set a new bar for the genre. When we began, no one ever imagined that we would make history at the box office. And now we have a rare opportunity to make history once again with this franchise. Peter Parker as an ordinary young adult grappling with extraordinary powers has always been the foundation that has made this character so timeless and compelling for generations of fans. We are very excited about the creative possibilities that come from returning to Peter's roots, and we look forward to working once again with Marvel Studios, Avi Arad, and Laura Ziskin on this new beginning." Michael Linton, then chairman and CEO of Sony Pictures, said Spider-Man will always be an important franchise for Sony Pictures, and a fresh start like this is a responsibility that we all take very seriously. We have always believed that story comes first, and story guides the direction of these films. And as we move on to the next chapter, we will stay true to that principle, and will do so with the highest respect for the source material and the fans and moviegoers who deserve nothing but the best when it comes to bringing these stories and characters to life on the big screen. The result was The Amazing Spider-Man, starring Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker and Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, and was directed by Mark Webb. The aesthetic was less based on Steve Ditko's designs and more visually influenced by the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book that ran from 2000 to 2009. The Amazing Spider-Man performed well financially and was the highest-grossing franchise reboot of all time. A sequel, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, was inevitably released in 2014, featuring Jamie Foxx as the villain Electro. The sequel would reunite the original's director and cast and didn't seem to completely live up to the sky-high expectations placed on it. The movie looked great, but critics cited issues with the story and plot coherence. In 2013, Sony ambitiously announced that The Amazing Spider-Man 3 would see release on June 10, 2016, and The Amazing Spider-Man 4 would hit cinemas on May 4, 2018. Sony Pictures Vice Chairman Jeff Blake told reporters that Spider-Man is our most important, most successful, and most beloved franchise, so we're thrilled that we're in a position to lock in these prime release dates over the next 5 years. These were exciting times for fans of comic book big screen adaptations, as just across town, Warner Brothers had successfully steered their own Superman reboot, Man of Steel, to worldwide receipts of over $600 million. Not content with adding sequels to the Amazing Spider-Man universe, Sony would also announce grand plans for spin-offs and solo titles for other characters pertaining to Spider-Man, and a whole wave of Spider-Man appearances in various related projects. This was late November 2013. Sony's longtime rights deal with Marvel for Spider-Man allowed them to utilize any character within the superhero's world, including rights to the villains, to Peter Parker's girlfriends, or even films about Aunt May and Uncle Ben if so desired. Walt Disney, however, had acquired Marvel back in 2009 and owned merchandising rights to Spider-Man and all related characters, so any further exploitation of the property would need to include a Disney sign-off. Michael Linton, Sony's entertainment chief, would field questions from analysts and investors, and he would state, "We do very much have the ambition about creating a bigger universe around Spider-Man. There are a number of scripts in the works. We are working closely with Marvel and Disney." The following month provided more details about the plan for a shared universe. Sony released an official statement that confirmed, "In a move to forge a new legacy in the story of Peter Parker on screen, Sony Pictures Entertainment, in association with Marvel Entertainment, is developing several new projects in the Spider-Man franchise." Columbia Pictures president Doug Belgrad then announced that screenwriters Alex Kurtzman, Roberto Orci, Jeff Pinker, Ed Solomon, and Drew Goddard were set to collaborate on overseeing the developing story arc over several films that would be produced by Avi Arad and Matt Tolmach. Along with the two producers and director Mark Webb, the 8 creatives would form a franchise brain trust to expand the universe for the brand and to develop a continuous tone and thread throughout all of the films. Under the deals, the studio announced that Kurtzman and Orci and Pinker are writing the screenplay for The Amazing Spider-Man 3, which the studio hoped Webb would direct. In addition, the team would expand upon the cinematic foundation laid by Webb, Arad, and Tolmach in the first 2 Amazing Spider-Man films. Kurtzman, Orci, and Solomon were tasked with writing the screenplay for Venom, which Kurtzman would direct. Drew Goddard was commissioned to write, with a view to directing, The Sinister Six, focusing on Spider-Man's gallery of villains and enemies. In the comic books, the original lineup were Dr. Octopus, who was the group's leader, plus Electro and Kraven the Hunter. Also, there was Mysterio, Sandman, and Vulture. The Sinister Six first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual No. 1, and the lineup of members would go through a further 15 iterations and combinations as the years rolled on. Commenting on the announcement, Belgrad said, "The Spider-Man film franchise is one of our studio's greatest assets. We are thrilled with the creative team we have assembled to delve more deeply into the world that Mark, Avi, and Matt have begun to explore in The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. We believe that Mark, Alex, and Drew have uniquely exciting visions for how to expand the Spider-Man universe in each of these upcoming films." Arad and Tolmach would say, "This collaboration was born out of the great experience we and Mark had working with Alex, Bob, and Jeff on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. With more than 50 years' wealth of stories in the comic books to draw upon for inspiration, the Spider-Man universe is truly boundless. In addition, the Spider-Man comics have the greatest rogues gallery of any series, and to have the chance to explore that on film is truly thrilling. Until now, we have approached each film as a separate, self-contained entity. But with this move, we have the opportunity to grow the franchise by looking to the future as we develop a continuous arc for the story. That is what Alex, Bob, Jeff, Ed, and Drew will do in this unprecedented collaboration, and we're excited about the directions they're taking the character and the world." Earning over $3.2 billion internationally, Spider-Man was the most successful franchise in the history of Columbia Pictures, and it was now full steam ahead. Goddard would set to work drafting ideas for his Sinister Six lineup. There had been Easter eggs in Amazing Spider-Man 2, featuring Dr. Octopus's arms and the Vulture's wings in a lab. The same frame had earlier appeared in the trailer, appearing to show a symbiote instead of reference to the Vulture. And the Vulture's wings were also included in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game. Sony had also announced a special promotion in which smartphone users were able to Shazam the end credit song and instantly gain access to a special promotion. Participants would receive a sneak peek at who the Sinister Six would be. The screenshots appear to reveal the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, the Vulture, Rhino, Kraven the Hunter, and Mysterio. The 6 teaser images would make viral news in comic book fandoms, although notably absent was the Sandman, prompting Sony to make comment that the final lineup was yet to be confirmed and that the promotion was only a tease. Speaking to Daniel Krupa at IGN Entertainment, the film's producers, Arad and Matt Tolmach, shed a little light on their hopes for the project. Here's a clip from the exclusive interview.
Nothing is sacred. I mean, it's gonna be the best 6 that you can imagine, but it's gonna make sense in the world.
When you translate comic to film, the word classic means the first 50 issues.
Yeah.
Because after that we all made changes that had to do with science fiction turning into science. I think just the need to move this world forward. So of course we'll make adaptations about these guys and what was their motivation, because many of them have multiple motivations. Depends, is it Ultimate Spider-Man, is it Spider-Man, is it some 3-piece issue that take them to space? We have a bigger responsibility, is to represent the character of the villain as it was conceived, because that's why they survived the test of time. All the rest, that's a movie. What an opportunity.
You know, again, what we've been talking about is there's no such thing as just a villain. You know, there are villains by virtue of choices that people make, but they always begin as humans, as characters, as flawed people, as tragic people. You know, there are great movies have been made about guys, a bunch of bad guys who get together to do something.
Seven Samurai.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge tradition of it. Those are sometimes the greatest characters to watch. A bunch of broken people coming together for whatever reason. It doesn't
always
mean
have
they're
this
not.
one thing in common. They'll hate Spider-Man, and they'll hate him because he's so different than them. But then, you know, when you sit by yourself somewhere and you think about it, they all had a different life at one time.
Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful about the Spider-Man universe. They have amazing stories if you look at it, and everybody's looking for redemption. They're unforgiven. Would you see one of the Sinister Six starting to feel like that? Yes, and people love it, by the way. They love when a villain finds his way back, because we're all very forgiving.
It's a bunch of badass characters doing something, you know? It's like, let's admit that we love watching that.
So still without any word on who would make up the villainous team, nor any word on potential story, fans were left to speculate. The following year, in an unrelated matter, Sony were the victims of cyber warfare. A release of confidential data, including emails, were hacked and made public. Within these leaked exchanges, we would learn elements of Sinister Six concepts, including his wish to set events on the Savage Land. The Savage Land is a creation of Jack Kirby, and first revealed in 1965's Uncanny X-Men issue 10. The Savage Land is a secret place that hosts dinosaurs, Neanderthals, and various other forms of life. Previously referred to as the land where time stands still in Marvel Mystery Comics issue 22 back in 1941, the Savage Land is a tropical prehistoric land surrounded by volcanoes. It is a tropical preserve hidden from the rest of the world. The Savage Land was initially created by the alien Nuwali at the request of the intergalactic Beyonders, whose goal it was to observe the process of evolution under the climate-controlled biosphere in the middle of the Antarctic. The Savage Land became home to the result of genetic modification, and would soon become home to a multitude of races and mutations. The Beyonders would eventually tire of their experimental game preserve and move on to other worlds. Even so, the conditions already established allowed extinct species from Earth a new home in which to flourish. The Savage Land's existence is common knowledge throughout the Marvel Universe. One time, the Daily Bugle sent resident photographer Peter Parker there to help uncover the illegal, underhanded, and manipulative exploitation of the local resources by the unethical Roxxon Energy Corporation. It seems that Goddard had chosen Dr. Octopus, the Vulture, Sandman, Mysterio, Black Cat, and even Spider-Man himself for the lineup. In terms of Spider-Man's inclusion, one email read, "The partnership between Spidey and Doc Ock was something O'Connor suggested should have greater emphasis, comparing and contrasting Otto Octavius' story arc to that of Michael Corleone in the Godfather trilogy. I think Michael Corleone is the greatest birth of villain protagonist as villain. Not sure it exactly analogous to Ock, but I think the idea of Ock as a character you are totally rooting for, even though he's doing bad things. And obviously the transformation from innocence to experience. Also, both characters are essentially motivated by family. Second, I was thinking about the iconic rivalry between Ock and Spidey, and I think it would be great if after Spidey helps Ock, and you really feel they're friends and want them to be on the same side, Ock has to do something that makes Spidey and the audience realize that they will never be able to be on the same side again. Because the birth of Doc Ock's story is only complete if you end it with the establishment of the iconic Spidey rivalry." A note from Goddard would say, "I'm really feeling that for a Sinister Six movie to work without Spidey in it, we need a movie star in the lead role. I'm not sure I could convince him to do it, but someone like Matt Damon as Doc Ock?" Goddard seemed particularly enthused about how he was going to portray Flint Marko, also known as Sandman. The director was hoping he could get actor Tom Hardy to accept the role. In regards to Hardy, his email said, "I'm going to write him a note this weekend, but off the top of my head, some possible talking points are, we're doing something different. It's time to celebrate the bad guys for once. We're inspired by the classic team mission of movies Dirty Dozen, Magnificent Seven, Guns of Navarone. We want that spirit, that swagger. If the Spider-Man franchise is the Beatles, then we're the Sex Pistols. Flint Marko is going to steal the show. The character is pure id, the anarchic enthusiast of the team. A chance to have fun while celebrating being bad. Tom embodies that anarchy, that triumphant nihilism. We've seen him tap into that spirit before in roles like Bronson, but now we have the chance to crank the volume up to 11. He's going to storm through London at the end like Godzilla. That is not purple prose. He's going to be as tall as a skyscraper in the third act of the movie. What does Doctor Strange have? Magic tricks? We've got a skyscraper Tom Hardy knocking down buildings." Another Goddard email would talk about Spider-Man's black suit and about producer Matt Tolmach's pitch for Venom. He wrote, "This is really similar to what Matt pitched me this morning about Venom, which he doesn't think is a movie on its own, but that Spider-Man and Sinister Six are the team in the next movie. He goes to them for help, maybe fighting Carnage, or he wears the black suit, but all the Sinister Six guys think it's lame, and he takes it off and it falls into the wrong hands." There was also talk of using the minor Marvel character Gog. Gog first appeared in 1971's The Amazing Spider-Man issue 103, when Kraven the Hunter found him in the Savage Land. Gog was a family pet that was sent to Earth from a dying world, and the supervillain would feature in the third incarnation of the Sinister Six. Goddard's email said, "Gog is tough, because then you're into a giant humanoid creature from another dimension. Kevin Feige has had success with the cosmic side of things, but it's a tricky line to walk. The Fantastic Four movies' treatment of the Silver Surfer and Galactus are the cautionary tale. Doc Ock could always just be trying to get his hands on weapons technology that mask a true, more nefarious mission that could involve springing Gog. And maybe the Six have a puppet master that is a twist reveal, like Robert Redford in Captain America 2. Here's Goddard speaking to Stephen Pape from Hey You Guys.
Sinister Six is obviously the one a lot of people are talking about. I mean, how big a role can we potentially expect to see Spider-Man play in this one? Or is this very much going to be focusing on the villains?
Well, the truth is, we're a few years out from any Sinister Six happening, so a lot can change between now and then. But my idea for it was always to make it a big, epic Spider-Man movie.
But sort of potentially a versus movie then.
Sort of, yeah. I can't say too much or Marvel will execute me. but the idea was to just celebrate all the things I love about Spider-Man.
In terms of setting any scenes on the Savage Land, Sony were uncertain whether or not they held the rights to use it. Did it belong to Spider-Man, or was it part of X-Men? Co-chair Amy Pascal would correspond with colleagues, writing, "I suggest you guys get in a room this morning and go over Drew's pitch and what is in Savage Land comics, and make sure we're okay and not in a situation where they can find any foot faults. We have known for weeks that Drew was setting his story on a tropical island with dinosaurs and time travel portals. We cannot be in a vulnerable position in any way. This is top priority today. When I was on my way to the meeting last night, Rachel O'Connor told me to be very general about mentioning islands with dinosaurs. So I said, hold on. We knew we didn't have Savage Land, and this was all checked with legal. She said, of course. Michael Marshall and Amy Wolfson said it was fine. There are lots of islands with dinosaurs. But her spidey sense kicked off, and now mine is. I'm sure it's fine. And I'm sure there might be adjustments. I had a complete overreaction with this, with everyone last night, before my meeting with Kevin, and was reassured that we were in the clean. And I'm sure it's fine, but something is bothering me still. Amy Pascal then sent one to the chairman saying, I could be overreacting, but we have known this for weeks, long before they came in the pitch. Drew has been talking about dinosaurs and fictional tropical islands. I can't believe anyone would have allowed us to go forward if there was a problem, and yet something is bothering me. There was even talk of possibly changing the name of the group in case the word sinister would unsettle younger members of the audience. The issues of the Savage Land's right holders and who legally owned what would soon evaporate though, because in 2015, Disney, Marvel Studios, and Sony made a deal to share the Spider-Man film rights, leading to a new iteration of Spider-Man being introduced and integrated into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, presumably in Captain America: Civil War. This deal allowed Sony Pictures to continue to own, finance, distribute, and have the final creative say on the solo Spider-Man films, with Disney responsible for distribution. Sadly for Drew Goddard, the film and its planned Amazing Spider-Man universe were permanently canceled. Marvel hit the reset button and it was back to the drawing board. The Sinister Six would be one of several high-profile casualties of the corporate reshuffle. IGN would speak to Goddard soon after and ask him, "It's fair to say that the now shelved Sinister Six was your dream project?" Goddard would say, "For sure. I've always wanted to do a Spider-Man project, and to come at it slightly differently just felt right for me. I was really excited about that one, but who knows what the future holds. The allure of Peter Parker is strong. It's a long game. It could still happen. It's certainly not going to happen soon, but for me, the making of it is the special part. Then after that, it's the business part. I want people to see these things, but it's done. And with Sinister, you know I love that script. It was really fun. I love the artist I was working with. I'd love to make that movie someday. But if we don't, I still gotta write. I still gotta do it. And you can't take that away from me. When you're doing just a straightforward superhero movie, you don't need a lot of villains. The focus is on one guy. I think with Sinister Six, it's different. To me, it's less about too many villains and more about too many antagonists, and there's a distinction. You never say the Dirty Dozen has too many characters. They're all villains, or you could argue that. But they're protagonists. The trick with Sinister Six is that I was making everyone the protagonist and less about 6-on-1, and more about coming at it a little differently. That was the idea. You have to be true to it. You can still have protagonists be evil. That's the secret. Look at something like, say, Reservoir Dogs. They're protagonists, but Michael Madsen is a complete psychopath. It's okay, you can do both. One of the fun things is that there have been so many iterations over the years that you can just mix and match. And I can't say who I ended up with, but that was the fun part, figuring that out. I felt strongly that I wanted this movie to just stand on its own. I feel like, in general, I get tired of these movies when they're becoming too much of a puzzle for people to solve. I'm like, no, just have fun. When asked later about the canceled Sinister Six by Sci-Fi Wire website, Goddard said, "It was really fun. I wouldn't have done it had I not thought there was a real opportunity to do something different and exciting and just flat out bananas. It was very much me, and a much more commercial version of the Cabin in the Woods mentality. The punk rock mentality that led to Cabin is very much at the core of Sinister Six. That's a fun one. Who knows, it could see the light of day. It's funny, I've been through a lot of volatility at a lot of different studios. Between MGM and Sony and Fox, at a certain point you start to realize, oh, this is just a volatile business, and you try to stay afloat as the boat rocks back and forth. The decision had been made to scrap the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and move ahead with another fresh reboot to be released in 2017. The Daily Beast would run a story about one of the emails from the hack. It was from Jeff Robinov, who was the head of Studio 8, who were backed by Sony, in which he stated his ideas for the direction a rebooted Spider-Man should take. He wrote, To argue that there's plenty of other superhero movies with levity in the marketplace, so why make more Spider-Man movies? Would be akin to saying there's no room for James Bond films because of all the espionage films and franchises that have come out over the years. There will always be room for this beloved, iconic hero. In the next Spider-Man movies, we can't go back to his origin story. Think of the 25 films in the James Bond franchise. Just because a new creative team comes aboard and breathes new life into a classic property, doesn't mean the origin story has to be retold. Robinov would suggest which comic book storyline to adapt, saying, "I might suggest looking at what is widely thought to be the most beloved Spider-Man storyline of all time, Kraven's Last Hunt, which ran across Amazing Spider-Man issues 293 and 294, Spectacular Spider-Man issues 131 to 132, and Web of Spider-Man issues 31 and 32. He said that Comic Book Resources had polled their readers in 2012, and this storyline was voted as the single greatest Spider-Man storyline of all time. In it, Kraven the Hunter tracks down Spider-Man, shoots him repeatedly, and leaves him for dead, buried underground. He then dons a Spider-Man costume and savagely starts attacking criminals. The trusted sources at the reliably accurate LatinoReview.com would print the story that Drew Goddard was being lined up to write and direct the tentatively titled The Spectacular Spider-Man, in a relaunch that was confirmed to be co-produced by Marvel and Sony. According to the source, The Spectacular Spider-Man would focus on a high school-aged Spider-Man and would not retell the origin story for a third time, so that by the time the story starts, Peter Parker is already established as Spider-Man. Latino Review's report included two potential plot points for the film: that the film was set to feature the young Spider-Man squaring off and engaging in combat against Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, in what would be an audition to join the Avengers, a plot point that Spider-Man readers would recognize as similar to the 1963 Amazing Spider-Man Issue 1 storyline, when Peter Parker realized that the best way to monetize his powers and repair Spider-Man's reputation was by joining the Fantastic Four. In order to try and do so, his idea of an audition was to break into the Baxter Building and antagonize his would-be teammates. Another plot strand in the Spectacular Spider-Man would, allegedly, utilize elements of Goddard's new abandoned Sinister Six script, in which he would see his villains teaming up to join forces. Goddard was said to be writing as well as directing the movie, and Marvel Studios' Kevin Feige would produce the film in what was envisioned as a three-part series to come out over consecutive summers, as Spider-Man would finally be integrated into the established Marvel Cinematic Universe. Goddard's Spider-Man, of course, didn't happen either, and instead, the following June, Tom Holland was cast as the title character, and John Watts was hired to direct what eventually became Spider-Man: Homecoming. When asked what happened during press for The Martian, Goddard explained, "I think that's more a question for them. But here's the good news. I've worked with Marvel a lot. The way that Marvel sort of works is they say, hey, do you have an idea for, here's the movie we're thinking about making. They sort of tell the world what they're thinking of making, and they sort of put it out there. If you have an idea for any of these, come talk to us." And I think with Spider-Man, I didn't really have an idea. Part of that might have just been because I had just written one. I spent a year working on Sinister Six, and I think I was in a headspace where I just didn't, it's very hard to say, okay, now write a new movie. So it never got that far. It never got taken that far. They know how much respect I have for them. They've been very nice to me over the years, and I know sooner or later we're going to find the right project. It's all about timing. There's stuff in all 5 of the Spider-Man films that I adore. The thing is, that character. He's such a transcendent character that it's really fun to see everyone take their crack at him. In 2018, Amy Pascal would speak of the discarded Sinister Six screenplay and say, "I'm just waiting for Drew to be ready to direct it. I would do anything with Drew Goddard. I'm just waiting for him to tell me he wants to." Goddard's final word on the Sinister Six Spider-Man project would be to say, "It was the giant, epic Spider-Man movie of my dreams. My vision of that movie was a summer annual, so you didn't have to worry about continuity. It was just, we take Peter, put him on an adventure, we put him back in his life. I intentionally wanted a movie that didn't have to worry about mythology and continuity. It was important to me to make a movie that could stand on its own. So the good news is, it slots in very well to any plan anybody ever wants. We just need to let a couple years go by, I think." And that's where we're currently up to, and where our story ends. Drew Goddard's The Sinister Six and the short-lived idea of the spectacular Spider-Man would never become a reality. And instead now, they take their place on our shelf of what-ifs, never-weres, and the greatest movies never made. As always, thanks for watching.